The Sky That Watches. A Sci-Fi Story. Part 1. Lira Hale woke to the sound of someone screaming at the sky. The cry tore through the thin morning air, raw and animal, echoing off the metal siding of Habitat C. Lira bolted upright, heart hammering, boots half-laced as she stumbled out into the cold dawn. The colony's perimeter lights were still dim, cycling down from night mode, and the horizon glowed with the faint lavender haze that passed for sunrise on Orison 6. A crowd had already formed near the observation ridge, and above them the sky was wrong again. Not subtly wrong, not in the way it had been for the past 12 nights. This was different. This was deliberate. The constellations had shifted into a shape that was unmistakably an eye. Not a perfect one. The iris was a cluster of blue-white stars. The pupil a dark void where no stars shone at all, but the pattern was too precise to be random, too symmetrical, too focused, and it was looking directly at the colony. Lira felt the dread before she understood it. A pressure behind her sternum, a coldness in her teeth, a prickling sensation along her scalp as if her hair were trying to stand on end. The others felt it too. She could see it in their posture, the way their shoulders curled inward, the way their eyes darted anywhere but upward. The sky was watching them. Again. "Commander Hale," someone called. "You need to see this." She was already pushing through the crowd, jaw clenched, breath fogging in the cold. The colonists parted for her, some whispering, some trembling, all of them refusing to look up for more than a second at a time. At the front of the ridge, Dr. Richard Amani stood with a handheld spectrometer clutched in white knuckles. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated, face pale beneath his dark skin. "It moved again," he said, voice shaking. "Not drift, not rotation. Movement." Lira swallowed. "How far?" Richard turned the display toward her. The numbers were impossible. 3.2 arc minutes, he whispered. "In a single night. That's..." Lira's throat tightened. "That's not stellar motion. That's not anything." Richard nodded once, sharply. "It's intentional." The dread pulsed again. A faint, rhythmic throb that seemed to come from the sky itself. Lira felt it in her bones, like a distant heartbeat that wasn't hers. She forced herself to look up. The eye stared back, and it blinked. A ripple passed through the stars. A subtle dimming, a contraction of the eyelid pattern, and the entire colony gasped as one. Someone fell to their knees. Someone else vomited. Lira's vision tunneled, her breath catching in her throat as the dread surged into something sharper, colder, more invasive. It wasn't just looking. It was focusing. "Inside," Lira barked, grabbing Richard's arm. "Everyone inside, now. Move." The colonists scattered, stumbling toward the habitats, clutching their heads or covering their eyes. The pulse from the sky grew stronger, more insistent, like a pressure wave pushing down on them. Richard didn't move. He was staring upward, transfixed, mouth slightly open. "Richard!" Lira shook him hard. "Move!" He blinked, shuddered, and tore his gaze away. It's communicating." "No," Lira snapped. "It's observing. That's all it's done since we got here." Richard shook his head violently. "No, Lira. Observation is passive. This is active. This is..." The sky pulsed again. Richard staggered, clutching his temples. "It's thinking." Lira dragged him toward the habitat dome, boots slipping on the frost-slick ground. The pulse intensified, a low, thrumming vibration that seemed to resonate in her spine. She didn't look back. She didn't dare. Inside the airlock, the pressure eased. The dread didn't vanish, but it receded enough for her to breathe again. Richard collapsed onto a bench, trembling. Lira sealed the inner door and keyed the intercom. "All personnel, report status. Anyone outside, get to shelter immediately. This is not a drill." Static crackled. Then voices chimed in. Shaky, breathless, but alive. She exhaled slowly. Then the lights flickered. Just once, but enough to make her stomach drop. Richard looked up at her, eyes haunted. It's not done. 12 hours earlier. The sky had already been shifting for days. At first, the colonists thought it was a calibration error. The telescopes were new, the atmospheric filters still adjusting to Orison 6's thin, ion-rich air. But when the naked eye constellations began drifting subtly, almost imperceptibly, the colony's astronomers grew uneasy. Stars didn't move like that. Not in hours. Not in days. Not in patterns. Lira had stood on the ridge with Richard and the others, watching the sky rearrange itself like a puzzle being solved by unseen hands. It's like it's turning toward us, Richard had murmured. Lira had dismissed it as poetic nonsense. She wasn't dismissing anything now. Back in the present. The command center was dim, lit only by the glow of monitors and the soft hum of the environmental systems. Lira paced behind the main console while Richard pulled up the latest telemetry. It's not just visual, he said, fingers flying across the interface. The instruments picked up a pulse. Rhythmic. Low frequency. Almost like a heartbeat, Lira finished. Richard hesitated. Yes. Lira rubbed her temples. We need to send a message to the orbital relay. Request immediate extraction. Richard swallowed. Lira, the relay's offline. She froze. What? He turned the screen toward her. The orbital relay, their only link to the wider colonization network, showed no signal. No telemetry. No orbit. Just a blank field of static. It's gone, Richard whispered. Not destroyed. Not drifting. Gone. Lira felt the dread again, creeping up her spine like cold fingers. Could it be interference? She asked. Richard shook his head. No, the relay isn't being blocked. It's not there. Lira stared at the screen, jaw clenched. We need to assume worst-case scenario. Prepare evacuation protocols. Get the shuttles ready. Richard didn't move. Richard. He looked up, eyes hollow. Lira. If the sky can move stars, it can move anything. She hated that he was right. The pulse intensifies. The next pulse hit harder. The lights flickered again, longer this time. The air vibrated. The metal walls groaned as if under pressure. Colonists huddled in the common area, whispering, crying, refusing to look at the ceiling even though the sky wasn't visible from inside. Lira stood at the center of the room, trying to project calm she didn't feel. Everyone listen, she said. We're initiating emergency protocols. Stay inside. Stay away from windows. We're preparing the shuttles for launch. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Launch to where? Someone asked. Lira hesitated. Richard answered for her. Anywhere but here. The pulse came again. Stronger, deeper, resonating through the floor. Several colonists clapped their hands over their ears, though the sound wasn't audible. It was felt. Lira steadied herself against a support beam. Richard, what's causing this? Richard stared at the ceiling. It's scanning us. Lira's blood ran cold. How do you know? Because it's rhythmic, methodical, like it's sweeping across the surface, like it's trying to resolve detail. Detail of what? Richard looked at her. Us. The first contact. The pulse stopped. Silence fell, heavy, suffocating, absolute. Then the sky spoke. Not in words. Not in sound. In light. The windows of the habitat domes flared with a sudden, blinding brightness as the stars outside shifted again. Rapidly this time, swirling into new configurations, forming shapes that flickered too fast to comprehend. Colonists screamed. Some collapsed. Some stared, transfixed, unable to look away. Richard grabbed Lira's arm. It's sending information. Lira shielded her eyes. What kind of information? Richard's voice trembled. Visual. Symbolic. It's trying to show us something. The lights dimmed. The stars settled. And the sky formed a new pattern. Not an eye. A face. Vast. Featureless. Alien. Watching. Waiting. The dread surged so violently that Lira fell to her knees, gasping for breath. Her vision blurred. Her heart pounded in her throat. The sky leaned closer. The stars brightened. And then, a single star in the forehead of the face pulsed. Once, twice, 3 times. Richard whispered, "It's counting." Lira forced herself to stand. "Why?" Richard swallowed hard. "Because it's about to do something." The star pulsed again. A 4th time. A 5th. A 6th. The ground shook. The colony lights died. The sky opened. And something looked through. Part 2. The sky opened. Not like a door. Not like a wound. More like a pupil dilating. A widening of perception. A deepening of focus. As if the universe itself were adjusting its gaze. The stars peeled back, revealing a darkness so absolute it seemed to swallow the horizon. A void deeper than space, deeper than time, deeper than anything Lyra's mind could hold without fracturing. Something was looking through. Not a creature, not a god, not anything with a name. A presence. A consciousness vast enough to shape constellations like muscles beneath skin. The colony's power grid died in a single synchronized gasp. Every light, every console, every heater, the hum of the air recyclers stuttered, then fell silent. Darkness swallowed the habitat, and the dread, the crushing, suffocating dread, surged into something unbearable. Lyra staggered, gripping the nearest wall as her vision blurred. The air felt thick, heavy, as if the atmosphere itself were being compressed by the weight of the gaze above. Colonists screamed in the dark. Richard's voice cut through the chaos, strained and trembling. It's not attacking. It's analyzing." Lyra forced her breath steady. "That's not better." "No," Richard whispered. "It's worse." The pulse returned, not from the sky this time, but from inside the habitat. A low, resonant vibration that made the metal floor tremble beneath their feet. The lights flickered back on. But they weren't the colony's lights. They were white, cold, sterile. And they were coming from the windows. Lyra turned slowly. Outside, the sky was gone. Not clouded. Not darkened. Gone. In its place was a single colossal eye, not made of stars, not made of matter, but of pure perception. A lens of impossible scale, filling the heavens from horizon to horizon. It blinked. The habitat shook. Colonists fell to their knees, clutching their heads, sobbing, praying, begging. Some stared upward, transfixed, their faces slack with awe or terror or both. Richard pressed himself against the wall, eyes wide. It's magnifying us." Lyra swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" Richard pointed at the window with a trembling hand. "It's zooming in." The eye dilated further. The dread sharpened into something needle-thin, piercing, invasive. Lyra felt it probing her thoughts, her memories, her sense of self. Not reading them, measuring them, cataloging them. The presence was not curious. It was clinical. A scientist examining microbes on a slide. Lyra grabbed Richard's arm. "We need to get underground. Now." Richard didn't argue. He couldn't. His breath came in short, panicked bursts as he followed her toward the emergency hatch. Behind them, the colonists writhed on the floor as the eye's focus intensified. Some convulsed. Some went still. Some whispered nonsense, their minds unraveling under the weight of being perceived. Lyra didn't look back. She couldn't. The descent. The emergency ladder led down into the geothermal tunnels, a network carved during the colony's construction, meant for maintenance and heat regulation. The air was warmer here, thicker, tinged with the metallic scent of machinery. The pulses from above grew fainter as they descended, but they didn't stop. Richard stumbled on the last rung, collapsing onto the grated floor. Lyra knelt beside him. "Richard, look at me." He did, barely. His pupils were blown wide, his skin clammy. "It wasn't just looking," he whispered. "It was comparing." Lyra frowned. "Comparing what?" Richard swallowed. "Us to something else. Something it's seen before." Lyra felt a chill crawl up her spine. "How do you know?" Richard pressed a shaking hand to his temple. Because it showed me. Lira froze. Showed you what? Richard's voice cracked. A world. Another world. Empty. Silent. Crushed flat like a footprint in dust. Lyra's breath caught. Destroyed. No, Richard shook his head violently. Not destroyed. Observed. Until it couldn't withstand the pressure anymore. Lira stood, pacing the narrow tunnel. We need to get deeper. The geothermal core might shield us. Richard didn't move. Richard. He looked up at her, eyes hollow. Lira. It's not the sky. She stopped. What? Richard's voice was barely a whisper. The sky isn't watching us. The sky is the eye. Lira stared at him. Richard continued, trembling. The stars aren't stars. They're facets. Reflections. The surface of something vast enough to wrap around the planet. We're inside its field of vision. Lira felt her knees weaken. That's impossible. Richard laughed. A short, broken sound. So is moving constellations. So is erasing an orbital relay. So is looking through the atmosphere like it's glass. Lira leaned against the wall, breath shaking. If the sky is part of it, then where is the rest? Richard closed his eyes. All around us. The tunnel's shift. A deep rumble vibrated through the tunnel. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The metal supports groaned. Lira grabbed Richard and pulled him to his feet. Move! They ran deeper into the geothermal network, boots clanging on the grated floor. The air grew hotter, the walls tighter, the dread thicker. Behind them, the tunnel lights flickered. Then they changed. Not flickering, blinking, in a pattern. Richard skidded to a stop. Lira? That's the same sequence the star used. The pulse pattern. The counting. The warning. Lira grabbed his wrist. We keep moving. But Richard didn't move. He stared at the blinking lights, entranced. Richard. He turned to her slowly, eyes unfocused. It's not warning us. It's synchronizing. Lira felt her stomach drop. With what? Richard's voice was barely audible. Our neural rhythms. The lights blinked faster. Richard clutched his head, groaning. It's trying to align us, bring us into phase. Lira pulled him away, forcing him down the tunnel. Don't look at it. Don't listen. But the pulses weren't sound or sight. They were inside. A pressure behind the eyes. A vibration in the skull. A rhythm that wasn't human. Lira gritted her teeth, pushing through the pain. The tunnel opened into the geothermal chamber. A vast cavern filled with pipes, turbines, and the roaring heat of the planet's mantle. The pulses weakened here. The dread eased. Richard collapsed beside a coolant pipe, gasping. Lira leaned against the railing, sweat dripping down her spine. For a moment there was silence. Then the turbines stopped. All of them, simultaneously. The chamber went still. Richard looked up, horror dawning. It found us. The lights in the chamber dimmed, then brightened, then dimmed again, blinking, in the same pattern, the same rhythm, the same gaze. Lira whispered, "It's everywhere." Richard nodded slowly. "It's not looking through the sky. It's looking through reality." The revelation. The chamber lights shifted again, not blinking now but rearranging. Lines of illumination bent, curved, twisted into shapes that defied geometry. Symbols, glyphs, images. Richard stared, mesmerized. "It's communicating." Lira grabbed his shoulder. "Richard, stop. You can't." But Richard stepped forward, eyes wide, breath shallow. The lights formed a shape. Planet. Not Orison 6. Another world. Then another. Then another. Each one flattened, crushed, compressed into a two-dimensional smear. Richard whispered, "It's showing me its work." Lira felt bile rise in her throat. "Why?" Richard turned to her, tears streaming down his face. "Because it wants us to understand what happens next." The lights shifted again. A new image formed. Orison 6. The colony. The habitats. The people. Then the image flattened. Lira grabbed Richard, pulling him back. "We're leaving. Now." Richard didn't resist. He couldn't. His legs barely worked. The final pulse. As they fled the chamber, the pulses intensified. Not rhythmic now, but urgent. The tunnels shook. The air vibrated. The dread became a physical force, pushing them down, crushing their lungs. Lira dragged Richard toward the surface access ladder. Behind them, the tunnel lights went out. All at once, darkness swallowed them. Then, a single point of light appeared above. Not a lamp, not a star. An eye. Small, focused, personal. Looking directly at them. Richard screamed. Lira didn't. She couldn't. The eye pulsed. Once. Twice. 3 times. Richard collapsed, convulsing. Lira grabbed him, shaking him. "Richard, stay with me." But Richard's eyes were rolled back, his body rigid, his breath shallow. The eye pulsed again. A 4th time. A 5th. A 6th. Richard went still. Completely still. Lira pressed her ear to his chest. No heartbeat. No breath. Nothing. The eye dimmed. Then vanished. Lira knelt in the dark, shaking, holding Richard's lifeless body. Above her, the tunnels groaned. The sky, the presence, the watcher was shifting again. Focusing. Preparing. Lira wiped her face, stood slowly, and looked upward into the darkness. Her voice was hoarse, broken, but steady. "If you're going to watch," she whispered, "then watch me." The dread surged. The tunnel shook. The sky opened again, and Lira Hale stepped toward it. Part 3. Lira climbed. The ladder rungs were warm beneath her hands, vibrating faintly with each pulse from above. Richard's body lay far below in the dark, swallowed by shadow and silence. She didn't let herself look back. She didn't let herself think. The presence was waiting. She felt it through the metal, through the air, through her bones. The dread no longer pressed against her. It flowed with her, through her, as if the watcher had shifted from observing to anticipating. The hatch above glowed faintly, not with electricity, with light from the sky. Lira pushed it open. The world above was unrecognizable. The colony was bathed in a cold, white radiance that cast no shadows. The habitats looked like bones under a surgical lamp. The ground shimmered with a faint, iridescent sheen, as if coated in a thin film of something not entirely physical. And the sky was a single, colossal eye. Not the swirling, star-made approximation from before. Not a pattern. Not a metaphor. A true eye. A lens of impossible scale, its surface rippling with faint distortions like heat haze. The iris was a swirling nebula of blues and whites. The pupil was a void so deep it seemed to pull at her thoughts. Filled the heavens. Filled everything. Lira stepped out onto the ridge. The eye tracked her. The dread surged, but she didn't collapse. She didn't look away. She let it wash over her, through her, until it became something else. Not fear, but clarity. "You killed him," she said. Her voice was small, swallowed by the vastness above. The eye pulsed. Not in denial. Not in apology. In acknowledgement. Lira clenched her fists. "Why?" The pulse deepened. The air thickened. And the sky changed. The eye dissolved into a cascade of shifting shapes. Not stars, not symbols, but impressions. Memories. Echoes. Images that weren't hers. A world of crystalline plains. A world of molten oceans. A world of towering spires made of living stone. Each one flattened, compressed, observed until it broke. Lira staggered. "You test worlds." The sky pulsed once. Yes. The answer wasn't spoken. It wasn't heard. It was known. Lira's breath caught. "Why us? Why now?" The sky shifted again. This time, the images were of Orison 6. The colony. The habitats. The people. Then, a shape Lira didn't recognize. A structure. A pattern. A signal. Something the colony had built without knowing its significance. Something that had drawn the watcher's attention. Lyra's stomach twisted. The relay. The sky pulsed. Yes. Lira shook her head. It wasn't a distress beacon. It wasn't a message. It was just a relay. The sky darkened. Not in anger. In disappointment. The pulse that followed was colder, sharper, more precise. A correction. A clarification. The relay had emitted a frequency the watcher recognized. Not a call. A signature. A pattern used by something it had observed before. Something it had flattened. Lyra's breath hitched. We weren't calling you. We were repeating something we didn't understand. The sky brightened. A single blinding pulse. Understanding. Recognition. Confirmation. Lira fell to her knees, gasping. We're not them. We're not whatever you saw before. The sky dimmed. The pupil widened. The dread surged. A question. A test. A demand. Prove it. Lyra's heart pounded. How? The sky shifted again. This time the images were of her. Her memories. Her choices. Her failures. Her fears. Her hopes. Her entire life laid bare in a cascade of light. The watcher wasn't looking at humanity. It was looking at her. Lira forced herself to stand. You want to know what we are? Then look. She opened her mind. Not willingly. Not bravely. But honestly. The sky pulsed. The dread sharpened. And the watcher looked deeper. The mind's horizon. The world dissolved. The colony vanished. The ground fell away. Lira stood in a vast, featureless expanse. A horizon of shifting light and shadow, neither physical nor imagined. The air was still, the silence absolute. Then the sky appeared. Not above, around. A sphere of perception enclosing her, infinite and intimate at once. A voice, not sound, not language, filled the space. What are you? Lira swallowed. Alive. The sky pulsed. Insufficient. Lira steadied herself. Conscious. Another pulse. Common. Lira exhaled slowly. Aware. The pulse deepened. Define. Lira closed her eyes. She thought of Richard. Of the colony. Of the fear. Of the hope. Of the stubborn, irrational, relentless will to survive. We question, she said. We doubt. We wonder. We look at the sky and ask what's out there. We don't just exist. We seek. The sky brightened. Not in approval. In curiosity. Seek what? Lira opened her eyes. You. The pulse stopped. The dread vanished. The sky went still. Completely still. For the first time since the constellations began to shift, the watcher hesitated. Lira stepped forward. You observe. You measure. You compare. But you don't understand us. Not really. You think we're patterns. Data. Echoes of something you've seen before. The sky darkened. A warning. Lira didn't stop. But we're not repeating a pattern. We're not mimicking something else. We're not a signal. We're a question. The sky pulsed once. A slow, deep vibration. Explain. Lira took a breath. You look at worlds to see what they are. We look at the universe to see what it means. The sky brightened. The pulse softened. The dread eased. For the first time, the watcher wasn't crushing her. It was listening. The decision. The sky shifted again. Images cascaded around her. Worlds observed. Worlds flattened. Worlds erased. Not out of malice. Not out of hunger. Out of evaluation. Out of classification. Out of a need to understand. The watcher had never encountered a species that looked back. Lira felt the presence withdraw slightly, its focus widening, its pressure easing. A question formed in the air. Not spoken. Not shown. Felt. What should be done with you? Lira's throat tightened. This was the moment. The decision. The judgment. She stood tall. You let us live. The sky dimmed. Why? Because we're not finished yet. The pulse deepened. All species claim this. Lira shook her head. Not like this. Not with this awareness. Not with this fear. Not with this understanding of what you are. The sky brightened. A slow, rising glow. You understand nothing. Lira stepped forward. Then teach us. Silence. Stillness. Then, a pulse unlike any before. Warm. Soft. Curious. The sky dissolved. The colony returned. The eye faded. The stars reappeared, not in patterns, not in shapes, but in their natural positions. The dread lifted. Lira collapsed to her knees, gasping. The watcher was still there, but it was no longer observing. It was waiting. Part 4. The watcher did not leave. It lingered, silent, vast, patient. The stars had returned to their natural positions, but the sky felt hollow, like a stage after the actors have stepped into the wings, yet remain just out of sight. The air tasted thin. The ground hummed with a faint, residual vibration, the afterimage of a presence too large to fully depart. Lira stood alone on the ridge. The colony was quiet, too quiet. Most of the habitats were dark. Some had collapsed under the earlier pulses. Others stood intact but empty, their doors hanging open, their interiors abandoned in panic or despair. She didn't know how many survivors remained. She didn't know if she was one of them. The watcher had not killed her, but it had not spared her either. It had marked her. She felt it in her skull, a faint warmth behind her eyes, a subtle pressure at the base of her spine. Not pain, not dread, attention. The watcher was waiting. For what? She didn't know. But she felt the question hanging in the air like static before a storm. What will you do now? Lira exhaled slowly. I'm not your experiment. The sky did not respond, but the ground did. A tremor rippled beneath her boots. Not violent, not destructive, but deliberate. A signal, a summons. Lira turned toward the central habitat dome. Its lights flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. The same pulse pattern. The watcher was calling her. Lira squared her shoulders and walked. The dome. The interior of the central dome was dim, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. The air was warm, stale, tinged with the metallic scent of failing machinery. At the center of the room stood the colony's primary sensor array, a towering pillar of metal and glass, its surface covered in blinking indicators and shifting holographic readouts. Except now, the indicators were not blinking. They were blinking back. The lights formed patterns, not random, not diagnostic, but communicative. The same glyphs she had seen in the geothermal chamber. The same symbols the watcher had used to show her its history. Lira approached slowly. The lights shifted. A new pattern formed. A circle. A line. A point. A sequence. Lira frowned. Coordinates. The lights pulsed. Yes. She stepped closer. Coordinates to what? The lights shifted again. A star. A planet. A structure. A signal. Lira's breath caught. It was the relay, but not the colony's relay. Another one. Older. Larger. Alien. The watcher had seen this signal before. Long before humanity existed. Lira whispered. You think we're connected to them? The lights pulsed. Not exactly. The watcher did not think humanity was the same species. It thought humanity was repeating their pattern. Unintentionally. Blindly. Dangerously. Lira clenched her fists. We didn't know. We didn't mean to. The lights dimmed. A question. Will you continue? Lira swallowed. Continue what? The lights brightened. The star. The planet. The structure. The signal. The pattern. The watcher believed humanity was on the same trajectory as the species it had flattened. A species that had built something dangerous enough to draw its attention. Something that had threatened more than itself. Something that had threatened the watcher. Lira stepped back. You think we're a danger? The lights pulsed. Not yet, but soon, unless something changed. Lira felt her pulse quicken. What do you want from me? The lights shifted. A new image formed. Her, standing before the watcher. Speaking. Choosing. The watcher was not asking for surrender. It was asking for direction. Lira whispered. You want me to decide what humanity becomes? The lights pulsed. Yes. The choice. The dome darkened. The air thickened. The watcher's presence returned. not as an eye in the sky, but as a pressure in the room, a weight on her mind, a vast intelligence folding itself small enough to fit inside her thoughts. Lira staggered, gripping the sensor array for support. The Watcher showed her images. Humanity's past, humanity's present, humanity's possible futures, a future of exploration, a future of expansion, a future of conflict, a future of collapse, a future of transcendence, a future of extinction. The Watcher did not judge. It observed, it measured, it compared, and now it asked, which path will you choose? Lira's breath shook. I can't decide for all of humanity. The Watcher disagreed. It showed her Richard, his curiosity, his fear, his awe, his death. It showed her the colonists, their panic, their hope, their fragility. It showed her herself, her defiance, her resilience, her willingness to look back. The Watcher believed she could choose, not because she was special, but because she was first. The first human to understand what the Watcher was. The first to survive its gaze. The first to speak to it. Lira closed her eyes. What happens if I choose wrong? The Watcher answered with silence. Not threatening. Not ominous. Honest. It did not know. Lira opened her eyes. The sensor array glowed softly, waiting. The Watcher waited with it. Lira took a slow breath. Then another. Then she spoke. I choose. The dome trembled. The lights brightened. The Watcher leaned closer. That we learn. The lights froze. The air stilled. The Watcher hesitated. Lira continued. Not expand. Not conquer. Not repeat the patterns of the species you destroyed. We learn. We understand. We grow without threatening the universe around us. The Watcher pulsed. A slow, deep vibration. Not dread. Not pressure. Recognition. Acceptance. Agreement. The dome filled with light. The sensor array surged with energy. The sky outside brightened. The Watcher was not leaving. It was changing. It was opening. It was offering. A connection. A bridge. A path forward. Lira stepped toward the light. The Watcher stepped toward her. And the climax began. Part 5. The light enveloped her. Not blinding. Not burning. Warm. Impossibly warm. Like stepping into sunlight after a lifetime underground. It wrapped around her. Through her. Dissolving the boundaries between skin and air. Thought and space. Lira did not fall. She expanded. The dome vanished. The colony vanished. The planet itself thinned into translucence, as if she were rising through layers of reality like mist. She felt the Watcher's presence. Not above, not around, but within. A vast, ancient consciousness folding itself into a shape small enough for her mind to hold without shattering. Barely. You chose learning. The voice was not a voice. It was a resonance, a vibration in the fabric of her thoughts. Lira steadied herself. Yes, you chose a path of uncertainty. She nodded. That's what learning is. A pulse of curiosity rippled through her. You accept risk. Lira exhaled. We always have. The Watcher considered this. Not quickly. Not slowly. In a way that suggested time itself bent around its contemplation. Then, we will learn together. The light surged. Lira gasped as her awareness stretched outward, expanding beyond the limits of her body, her senses, her species. She felt the planet beneath her. Its molten heart, its shifting plates, its thin, trembling atmosphere. She felt the colony, the fear, the confusion, the scattered survivors huddled in dark habitats. She felt the sky, not as a dome above, but as a membrane, a surface, a lens through which the Watcher perceived the universe. And then, she felt it, the Watcher, not as an eye, not as a presence, as a structure, a lattice of perception spanning light years, a network of awareness woven through the void, a being so large that stars were dust motes drifting across its surface. Lira's breath caught. You're everywhere. A pulse. Not everywhere. Not yet. Lira's mind reeled. What are you? The Watcher unfolded a fragment of itself, a sliver of its identity, small enough not to crush her. She saw a universe before galaxies formed, a consciousness awakening in the dark, a hunger not for matter, not for energy, but for understanding. Worlds observed, worlds measured, worlds flattened when they threatened the balance of what it sought to comprehend. Not a predator, not a god, a scientist, a guardian, a witness. Lira trembled. Why show me this? You asked to learn. The light softened. And you are the first to survive the looking. Lira swallowed. What does that mean? The Watcher pulsed. Most minds break when seen. A chill ran through her. Why didn't I? The Watcher hesitated. A rare thing. A monumental thing. We do not know. The light dimmed. This is why we chose you. Lira's pulse quickened. Chose me for what? The Watcher unfolded another layer of meaning. Not words, not images, but a sensation of vast potential. A bridge, a conduit, a shared perspective. To be the first of your kind to see as we see. Lira's breath caught. You want to merge with me? No. The Watcher's pulse deepened. We want to merge with your species. Lira staggered. That's impossible. It begins with one. The light brightened. You. Lira shook her head. I'm not a leader. I'm not a scientist. I'm not. You are the first to look back without fear. Lira's voice cracked. I was terrified. And you looked anyway. The light surged again, wrapping around her mind, her memories, her identity. Not consuming. Connecting. She felt the Watcher's perception brush against her thoughts. Gentle, cautious, curious. It showed her a star system she had never seen. A nebula shaped like a spiral of glass. A world of floating continents drifting on magnetic tides. A civilization long gone, flattened not out of malice but necessity. Lira whispered, You want us to understand the universe the way you do. Yes. And in return, you want to understand us. Yes. Lira closed her eyes. This was unprecedented. A cosmic intelligence offering partnership instead of annihilation. A species of fragile, frightened humans being asked to step into a role no one had imagined. A bridge between scales of existence so different they barely shared the same definition of life. Lira opened her eyes. What happens if I say no? The Watcher dimmed. Then we leave. Lira exhaled. And if I say yes? The Watcher brightened. Then we begin. Lira stood in the light, trembling, breath shaking, heart pounding. She thought of Richard. She thought of the colony. She thought of humanity. She thought of the sky that had watched her, and the sky she now had the chance to watch back. She lifted her chin. I say yes. The Watcher pulsed. A deep, resonant vibration that shook the fabric of the space around her. Then see. The light exploded. Lira's consciousness expanded outward at impossible speed, racing across the planet, through the atmosphere, into the void, into the lattice of perception that was the Watcher's true form. She saw the universe, not as stars, not as galaxies, as information, as patterns, as questions. And she understood. This was only the beginning. Part 6. The light collapsed inward, not fading, condensing, compressing, folding the vastness of the Watcher's perception back into a shape small enough for a human mind to survive. Lira fell, not physically, not through space, through scale, through awareness, through the narrowing of a universe she had briefly seen in its true dimensions. Her consciousness shrank back into her body like a star imploding into a single point. She gasped. Air filled her lungs. Gravity returned. The dome reformed around her, its metal walls trembling with residual energy. The sensor array flickered, then dimmed, its lights settling into a steady, rhythmic pulse. Not malfunctioning, not random. Breathing. Lira opened her eyes. The world was different. Not visually, not physically, fundamentally. She could feel the Watcher's presence, not as an external force, but as a quiet hum beneath her thoughts, like a second heartbeat. A connection, a thread, a bridge. She stood slowly, her limbs trembling with the aftershock of cosmic perspective. The dome felt small now. The colony felt fragile. The planet felt like a single grain of sand on an infinite shore. And yet, she felt grounded, anchored, human. The Watcher had not replaced her mind. It had expanded it. A voice, not external, not internal, but adjacent, resonated softly. You are returned. Lira exhaled. I'm still me. Yes. And you're still you. Yes. She nodded. Good. The Watcher pulsed. A faint vibration in the air, like a distant storm. The others awake. Lira stiffened. Others. Survivors. Lira's heart lurched. She ran. The survivors. The colony's main concourse was dim, lit only by emergency strips and the faint glow of the sky outside. The habitats were quiet, their doors half open, their interiors shadowed. Then she heard it. A voice. Weak. Hoarse. Commander? Lira turned. 3 colonists stood near the collapsed comms tower. Pale, trembling, eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. 2 she recognized. Mara Vance, the agricultural lead, and Joran Pike, the engineer. The third was a child, maybe 12, clutching a cracked datapad like a lifeline. Mara staggered toward her. Lira. We thought you were dead. Lira swallowed. I'm here. Joran stared at her, brow furrowed. Something's different about you, the child whispered. The sky stopped hurting. Lira knelt, meeting the child's eyes. It won't hurt you again. The child nodded slowly, as if believing her without understanding why. Mara looked up at the sky. Now calm, stars steady, no patterns shifting. Is it gone? Lira hesitated. The Watcher pulsed softly. Answer. She stood. No, it's not gone. Joran stepped back. Then we're still in danger. Lira shook her head. Not danger. Contact. Mara frowned. Contact with what? Lira looked up. The stars shimmered faintly. Not moving, not rearranging, but aware. Something that wanted to understand us, she said. Something that almost destroyed us because it thought we were repeating a pattern that once threatened it. Joran's voice cracked. And now, Lira exhaled. Now it wants to learn with us. Silence. Then Mara whispered, Lira, what did it do to you? Lira didn't answer with words. She let them feel it. Not the Watcher's full presence, that would crush them, but a faint echo, a soft ripple of perception that brushed against their thoughts like a breeze. Mara gasped. Joran fell to his knees. The child stared at her with wide, unblinking eyes. Lira spoke softly. It didn't change who I am. It changed what I can see. Joran trembled. You're connected to it. Lira nodded. Yes. Mara swallowed. And what does it want from us? Lira looked at the sky. The Watcher pulsed. Begin. She turned back to them. It wants us to choose what comes next. The first directive. They gathered in the central dome. The 3 survivors, Lira, and the quiet hum of the Watcher's presence. The sensor array glowed softly, projecting faint patterns across the walls. Mara spoke first. We can't stay here. The colony is failing. Joran nodded. Power's unstable. Food stores are compromised. We need evacuation. Lira listened. The Watcher listened with her. The child whispered, Where would we go? Silence. Then Lira spoke. We're not leaving. Joran stared at her. Lira, we can't survive here. Lira shook her head. Not alone. Mara frowned. What does that mean? Lira stepped toward the sensor array. It means we're not alone anymore. The Watcher pulsed. The dome lights brightened. A holographic projection formed. A star map unlike any human chart. Not three-dimensional. Not linear. A lattice of perception, showing not positions but relationships. Mara gasped. What is that? Lira's voice was steady. A map of what the Watcher sees. Joran whispered. This is impossible. Lira turned to them. This is the first directive. The first step. The Watcher wants us to learn how to see the universe the way it does. Mara shook her head. Why us? Lira met her gaze. Because we survived. The child stepped forward. What do we do? Lira knelt, placing a hand on the child's shoulder. We rebuild. We learn. We become something new. The Watcher pulsed. A soft, resonant vibration. Agreement. The new dawn. The sky brightened. Not with sunlight. With awareness. The Watcher's presence spread across the horizon. Not oppressive, not invasive, but protective. Curious. Patient. Lira stood on the ridge as the first light of Orison 6's lavender dawn crept across the landscape. The survivors stood behind her. The colony was broken. The future was uncertain. But the sky was no longer a threat. It was a partner, a teacher, a witness. Lira closed her eyes. The Watcher's voice resonated softly. We begin. She opened her eyes, and the new era began with her. This is the end of the sci-fi story, The Sky That Watches. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more sci-fi stories. Thanks for listening.